And it's that time of the morning when we talk business. Hello and welcome to Business Morning on the Breakfast Show here on Business Day Television, broadcasting to you live from our studio here in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. I am Deborah Ezeh. Now let's begin with the top news stories making the rounds in the world of business. A statement by the Ministry of Labour and Employment on Tuesday showed that an agreement had cleared the way for the unionization of Dangote Group workers within 2 weeks from 9th to 22nd of September 2025. The statement also noted that none of the Dangote workers would be victimized as a result of the trade dispute. Recall that the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers had embarked on strike over the refusal of Dangote Group to allow its workers to unionize by the registered labor unions. The federal government, through Mohammed Dingyadi, Minister of Labour and Employment, however, called both parties for a reconciliation, resolving the issue at a marathon meeting, which started on Monday night and could not end until Tuesday evening. And moving on, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, and the Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, Taiwo Oyedele, has declared that there was no immediate plan to implement the 5% fuel tax now or January 1st, 2026. The Trade Union Congress of Nigeria had on Monday issued a 14-day ultimatum to the federal government to rescind any plan to introduce any tax surcharge or risk a total shutdown of the economy. Edu, who addressed a press conference in Abuja, admitted that while the Tax Administration Act will become operational on January 1st, 2026, the 5% fuel surcharge, which is captured in the Act, will not automatically come into effect. And still on, revenue generation at the Rivers Port has witnessed a 32% hike, with the Area 1 Command of the Nigeria Customs Service raking in 187 billion naira in the first 8 months of 2025. The Nigeria Customs Service, led by Bashir Adewale Adeniyi, Comptroller General of Customs, had initially proposed a revenue target of 6.584 trillion naira for 2025, later raised to 10 trillion naira by Nigerian Senate. Agency reports, however, suggest that the NCS may have already surpassed their initial target projection for the first half of 2025. Comptroller of Customs and outgoing Area Controller of Area 1 Command, YM Ashim, while handing over to his successor, Salamutu Atuluku, on September 4th, say the feat was made possible through the collaborative efforts of officers and men of the command. And to end the news, Mali's military revealed that it had carried out airstrike in the gold-rich western region of Kais after Al-Qaeda-linked militants took steps to impose a blockade on fuel imports to the landlocked West African country capital, Bamako. The operations are the latest attempts by Mali's military rulers who took power after coups in 2020 and 2021 to ease growing pressure from militant groups. A spokesperson for Jamaat Narusat Al-Islam wal Muslimi on Thursday announced a blockade, insisting it would also restrict the movement of residents of the western town of Kais and Nioro, near the border with Senegal and Mauritania. And still to come after this break, navigating post-oil diversification and SME resilience. Just stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on the Breakfast Show here on Business Day Television. Now let's move to our first conversation for today. Small and medium enterprises, SMEs, are widely recognized as the backbone of Nigeria's economy. They account for nearly half of the country's GDP, employ millions of people, and drive innovation across sectors from agriculture to retail, manufacturing, and technology. Yet, despite their immense potential, SMEs in Nigeria continue to face a daunting challenge: access to finance. According to the International Finance Corporation, Nigeria faces a staggering $158 billion SME financing gap. This gap not only stifles growth and expansion for small businesses, but also limits their ability to create jobs, compete globally, and contribute meaningfully to economic development. For many entrepreneurs, the barrier include high interest rates, lack of collateral, limited access to credit information, and inadequate government support. But what can be done to close this gap? How can financial institutions, policymakers, investors, and entrepreneurs themselves work together to unlock the needed capital? And more importantly, what innovative model of financing, such as fintech solution, venture capital, impact investing, and government-backed credit guarantees can be leveraged to support the growth of SMEs? Joining us today to shed light on this pressing issue is David Adeoye. He's the director of Quartus Economics. He's also an expert with deep insight into SME financing and economic growth. Good morning and thank you for joining us, Mr. David Adeoye.
Good morning, madam. Nice to be with you this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now let's go straight into it. Now let's set the scene. Nigeria's SMEs, they contribute significantly to the economy, and yet the financing gap remains really huge. So why do you think this challenge persists despite the sector's importance?
Okay, well, so where we stand today as a nation, we have an economy that is largely informal, and the financing gap we see is not limited to SMEs in isolation. It's something that we have to look at the entire economy, look at the other players. Now, there are two major reasons why SMEs find it hard to get the kind of financing they need. The first reason is the risk profile. Most financial institutions are not able to cope with the risk profile of many SMEs. Now, when the economy itself presents a lot of macro risks, like we've had until recently when stability began to return to the economy, it is normal for financial institutions who are custodians of other people's funds to be careful in terms of the risk profile that they assume. Now, that is something we cannot shy away from. The other fact we also cannot ignore is the cost of financing. When you have a situation where even a number of established borrowers are getting funding at 25% or more, SMEs are literally consigned to the group of those who will borrow at 30% or more. And the question to ask is, what is the profit margins that these small and medium scale enterprises are getting? If the profit margin is low, then affordability of credit becomes an issue. So one can say that except for those few SMEs that are quite strong in terms of their operating performance, in terms of their margins, in terms of velocity, it will be difficult for most SMEs to access funding at the current rates that we are having. But in addition to that is the issue of risk profile. Financial institutions, lenders in particular, are very comfortable with stable cash flows. And when we talk about risk, it's about variability. When the variability in returns is quite high, lenders naturally shy away. So this situation will persist or has persisted and will still persist as long as these two factors are in place.
Right.
So long as we have high costs, and low and the high risk profile of SMEs. Yeah.
Okay. So the IFC, they estimated that the gap is at 158 billion US dollars. So what do you think this figure mean in practical terms for the Nigeria's economic growth?
Now, that's an interesting statistic. If we put that side by side with the size of our GDP, we find we are having an SME funding gap that is something in the region of 60% of our GDP. And by the way, most analysts have estimated Nigeria's GDP at $243 billion. At Quartus Economics, we take a different view, our GDP is actually about $252 billion. And I'll explain to you why. The $243 billion was arrived at by applying an exchange rate of 1,600 or 1,580 to Nigeria's Naira GDP, as if it were an account balance. We should understand that the GDP is what we call in economics a flow variable. It's not a stock variable. So the GDP is produced over the course of a period from January to December. If that is the case, the right approach to compute the GDP will be to convert the Naira GDP at the average exchange rate during the year. And we used that, and we arrived at a figure of $252 billion. Now, having said that, if we divide 158 by 252, that means we have a funding gap that is about 62, nearly 63% of our GDP. That is quite huge. So in terms of our economic growth, it suggests that we cannot in any way come close to our aspirations, whether in terms of the size of the economy or in terms of poverty alleviation, so long as this funding gap remains. Now, businesses have to be profitable. Margins have to improve for them to be able to afford the available capital that we have. And you see, even while I mentioned the bank rates, the truth is that many SMEs even borrow at a higher cost. You have those that borrow at close to 5% per month. There are those that borrow at 3.5, 4% per month to do their business. Now, if the funding is available, if we can unlock, let's even say half of this funding, if we can unlock simply let's say $50 billion of SME funding, it can have massive effect on Nigerian SMEs. But again, it's not just the quantum, the cost matters. At what cost does this funding come? So we need to think about that as well. So we have growth that is trapped because of the lack of SME funding.
Speaking about SME funding, now let's move to the challenges that these SMEs face. So from your perspective, what are the main reasons SMEs struggle to access financing and also funding in Nigeria?
Okay, good. Now, when we talk about business or businesses, there is the issue of formality or informality, but there's also the issue of size. So SMEs are categorized based on size. And when we look at the threshold, before now, we used to say that an SME is a company or is a business that generates annual revenues of less than 500 million naira per annum. That's annual revenues of 500 million naira or less. But it's important that we get dynamic with some of these classifications. If we are using 500 million naira as the threshold for SME classification, when we had an exchange rate of 413 or 443 naira to a dollar, are we still using the same benchmark today at an exchange rate that is about a third of that? So it's important to be clear on the threshold. But when we come back to the issue of financing, why do SMEs struggle? Number one, there is the issue of stability, which again comes to risk profile. Has the business operated with stable results over time? Second, we have the issue of structure. Third, we have the issue, and when I talk about structure, does the company have appropriate divisions that takes care of specific aspects of operations and functions? Some companies will require that, some may not. Still talking about structure is the related issue of governance. Now, what you find is the lending criteria or the lending framework that most financial institutions use have to do with formal organizations and company organizations with a level of size, a level of formality, a level of structure. So usually an SME will not qualify. But we've seen a number of financial institutions, from deposit money banks to microfinance banks, who are actually pushing. There's a particular tier 2 bank that has been pushing hard for SME advisory and pushing hard in terms of SME assistance. So the institutions are doing quite a lot, but the issues of variability in performance, which is tied to the risk profile, still persists. And of course, the costs, then the matters of structure. When lenders are giving out money, they are looking at capacity, they are looking at character, they are looking at collateral, which is an issue we'll come to quickly. They are looking at covenants. How enforceable are some of the covenants that you have in loan agreements with an SME business, especially when the SME company is asset light and does not have physical or real collateral, like we will say. Yeah, so these are issues that most SMEs still struggle. And one aspect we cannot overlook is the issue of credit risk. Large companies can survive when customers default or clients default on payments. For SMEs, it becomes an issue when you operate in a weak credit system. If customers or clients are not paying, it affects the operations of the business. Now, this is even a bigger issue for SMEs that operate in the service industry. For those that operate in physical goods, it's somewhat easier to insist on cash and carry. But for SMEs that sell services, I can assure you it can be a struggle getting clients or customers to pay as and when due. It's a major issue. And if lenders don't have the assurance that your customers will pay on time, it raises your risk profile. It makes lenders quite uncomfortable.
Okay, now
Those are some
speaking
of
about the lenders and these financial institutions, how do you think the banks, especially, and other financial institutions can redesign their lending practices to better support this small, medium enterprises?
Okay, now, so for a start, it's important to understand that the banking sector in particular is a highly regulated sector. So a bank typically has limited discretion on what it can do. And like I mentioned earlier, our traditional lending template or framework favors large established organizations. They are able to borrow cheaper because their credit profile is quite lower compared to SMEs. So if we are going to start thinking or having a discussion on how banks can assist SMEs with access to funding, we have to begin with the regulatory framework. And this is something that will require deliberate conversations between or among banks, their regulators, and the SMEs themselves. There is need to come to a consensus on what can work. Now, I use this analogy or this metaphor. It's difficult sometimes for people who wear tie and suits and who sit in air-conditioned offices to, on their own, simply create policies for businesses that sweat under the sun. For people that struggle from warehouse to warehouse, who are doing delivery. So if we are coming up with the right policies, first thing we need to do is to sit down and secure a proper diagnosis. We need to go beyond analysis. We need to ask ourselves, what are the real issues? We see everyone sees the symptoms, but what are the real issues? What causes variability? Now, one of the things that I know that some institutions have try to do is, okay, if an SME supplies an established business, the risk profile of that SME can be, in a way, linked with that of the established business that it works with. So we need to also look at the entire ecosystem, but our policies must be embracing in terms of consultation, in terms of addressing the real issues. Then it's quite important that we also look at the growth of SMEs. An SME should not remain an SME after 10 years, as it were. Yes, some businesses may not scale to become multi-billion naira business, but it's also important to see what hinders the growth, because things that hinder growth will naturally hinder access to financing. So we can say also, what incentives can the regulators and lenders create? How do we encourage SMEs? There are plenty of companies that even do multi-billion naira in turnover, but are not as formal. How do we encourage them to become formal businesses and so on?
Okay, now let's quickly wrap it up, because you've said so many amazing things concerning this conversation today. So for the sake of SMEs listening today, what steps do you think they can take to actually make themselves more investment ready? Because in as much as we bring the government into this, are these SMEs ready for whatever change that we are actually clamoring for today? So what do you think they can actually take to make more themselves more investment ready?
Well, so number one, investment in an existing business will be based on records. So SMEs need to be careful to maintain adequate and proper records, not just financial, of what goes on, how goods move in, how they move out, prices, cost, margin. Yes, it's important to maintain the right financial records of a company's operations, have audits from time to time. That is fundamental, because from both a legal, a regulatory, and a banking relationship perspective, records speak for a business, and the records of a business speak for themselves. Secondly, is beyond records, it's important for SMEs to engage in formal planning. What is the strategy of the business? So records deal with the past and give a picture of where the business is at the moment. But looking forward, what is the plan? What are the opportunities the business will need to unlock? Where can it create value? What are the issues it is facing? What are the plans to address those issues? So first thing I will say is records, and SME should not joke with records, because by default, SMEs focus on performance and survival in most cases. And if you are not careful, it's easy to get overwhelmed with the day-to-day challenge of keeping the business going. But records are critical. No one can unlock the future without a clear plan. We can't depend on just good fortune. And in our office, there's something we talk about, method over magic. So it's also important to understand, how does this organization plan, or how does this business plan to position itself over the next 5 years, over the next 3 years, and so on. So those will be my two key takeaways. And from time to time, I will say regular diagnosis. Check what is working, check what is not working, and find practical solutions for what needs to be fixed.
So finally, now let's look ahead. Do you believe that Nigeria can realistically close the 158 billion US dollar financing gap? And what's the roadmap?
Can we close this? The answer in my mind will be yes. Nothing is impossible. We can close the gap. How? Which I believe you are talking about the roadmap. In looking at the roadmap, we need to consider two things. We shouldn't constrain ourselves about thinking linearly. Our roadmap should be guided by a proper diagnosis. What ails the business? If a business is not profitable and we are pumping funding into it, we probably will have a black hole. So it's important to check where are the areas of highest and best use of this funding. Then beyond that, how do we feed the growth of the economy on the demand side so that the funding can be meaningful? So I will say that, yes, we can close the gap, but to close the gap requires us to look beyond the gap, to ask ourselves certain questions. What is the revenue profile of our SMEs? How can we enhance that revenue profile? How can we help SMEs improve their margins? If revenues grow and margins improve, funding becomes meaningful, funding becomes safe, funding becomes lower risk, as it were. So I will say the things that ail our SME group, they actually go beyond the SME sector. As a country, we need to promote enterprise over establishment, as it were. Let's promote the culture of trade, the culture of making things. Thank you.
All right. So before I actually let you go, I want to know, do you think the partnership between government, banks, and also fintech, and I can actually say international investors, do you think it can accelerate SME growth?
Yes, it can. Now, and it can definitely accelerate SME growth. I talked about the issues we need to look at, but it's also important to look at this from a process perspective. So what are fintechs looking for? Fintechs want scale and they want results in terms of profit. So fintechs will assist to provide access to funding. They can simplify the funding process, they can simplify risk profiling and so on. On the part of government, I think the interest of government, for one, should go beyond revenue generation. The interest of government should primarily be on economic growth. When the economy grows adequately, the government gets revenues and we can reduce poverty. So government needs to be clear about its objectives and which of those objectives take precedence. Now, beyond that, for international organizations, they call the international investors, they come in two or three categories. You have donor agencies, you have multilateral funding, and you have the investors, plain vanilla investors. They just want returns on their money. All those three, now the development financiers or donor agencies want to be sure that you can provide, that your investment environment is good, and where it's not, they look at what can be fixed, they assist. The plain vanilla investors, they want returns on their money, so they are not coming around to help us improve our business environment and so on. So the partnership so government needs to look at the requirements of each of these categories and position to address the issues, and where necessary, empower our institutions to do certain things differently. Not just to do new things, but to do some things differently. That will help as we try to close this gap.
Thank you so much for your insights on Business Morning Show at Adeoye, David. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you too.
All right. Still to come after the break, gap, making technology accessible for African entrepreneurs. To stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on the Breakfast Show. Now let's move on to our second conversation for today. Across Africa today, the conversation around entrepreneurship is incomplete without technology. From retail to agriculture, healthcare to logistics, digital tools are redefining how businesses operate. Yet, while technology presents immense opportunities, many entrepreneurs continue to struggle with access, whether it's high cost of digital adoption, limited technical expertise, or even the simple belief that technology is only for people with a background in coding. The good news is that innovation is catching up with these challenges. The rise of no-code platforms and artificial intelligence is reshaping the entrepreneurial landscape, allowing business owners, even those without technical backgrounds, to build, scale, and automate their businesses. These solutions are not only breaking barriers, but also creating a more inclusive ecosystem where anyone with an idea can bring it on to life. Joining us today is Deborah Omotara, a dynamic professional whose career bridges communication, client relationship management, and technology-driven innovation. She currently serves as a community manager at Nocode Africa, where she trains and mentors young people to embrace digital tools, and as a senior client relationship manager at Checklist Support Services, where she helps businesses solve challenges through innovative tech solutions. Good morning, Deborah Omotara. It's good to have you on the show.
Hi, good morning. How are you doing? So great to be here.
I'm very well. It's good to have you again. All right, let's go straight into it. Deborah, you started your career in communication and client relationship management. What inspired your transition into tech ecosystem, and how has that shaped your perspective?
Oh, well, I will start by saying tech is for everyone and tech is the future. What actually inspired my transition into tech started when I was contracted to work on the project. And that's the project was tech inclined, and I didn't have any knowledge in tech. So I actually lost, that project. So I felt very bad because I felt tech is accessible. I could have gone to YouTube, check on videos, and see how I can, master the craft. But losing that opportunity gave me the passion to say, oh no, I want to be in this tech space. I want to start something. And so far, after taking self-learning, courses, and also reaching out to people who are already in the tech space, I was able to get access to mentorship, and this helped me to start my tech journey. So I transitioned from just being a client relationship officer to being a tech enthusiast, and also helping others to, navigate the tech space. So it's easy for me to say, yes, it has actually changed how I see the world entirely. I usually use this, tech is the magic wand, and it just helps you just do bigidi magadabu, and everything works perfectly. So it has shaped my perspective to say the world can actually be better when we create more solutions using technology. So we can see the likes of all the technology things that we use currently in Nigeria and even outside the country. We see that the world is becoming easy, better with technology. Yeah, that's what I have to say regarding that. My perspective has really changed.
Yeah, in your line of work, how have you seen entrepreneurs' mindsets around technology evolve over the years?
I think I posted something on my LinkedIn page some weeks back. How I was making a comparison between a project, like a business plan I wrote some 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it was just a business that didn't involve technology. It was a traditional business, no technology involved. Just maybe I plan to actually use WhatsApp as my major response. That's the biggest technology there, for businesses. But this year, when I wanted to write that business plan again, it has totally changed in the sense that as an entrepreneur, I now know how to use tech, and I have to put it in my business for me to stay forward, for me to be better, and for me to be, on the top of the list for competitors. So if I'm coming on board to say, oh, I want to be using WhatsApp as a means of getting responses, look at the time, look at the labor force you have to employ, because using WhatsApp requires you to employ someone who will be active 24/7, which is not possible. But with tech, we have the invention of applications, websites, where you can just be sleeping and people are making orders, without the intervention of human beings. So entrepreneurship has really changed with the innovation of tech. Now that business is taking a different turn, because technology is now involved. So over the years, I believe that most entrepreneurs have been able to transition, evolve from just being traditional business owners who barely have a website, because most businesses in Africa, they don't consider having a website as a compulsory thing for their business. Maybe if they have a social media platform, they just use that as a means of publicity. But with technology, entrepreneurs are shifting towards creating products that actually solve problems without a lot of labor capital invested in it. So entrepreneurs are seeing that you need tech. For this business to try, you need tech, you need AI, you need a lot of technological solutions to make your business stand out among many. And that's why today we have a lot of tech products. We have fintechs, we have edutechs, we have even entrepreneurship tech, we have e-commerce. And e-commerce, because of technology, is projected to actually skyrocket into a very booming business because most people are online and most people are using technology. So there's a need as entrepreneurs to actually be in the tech space. Your business has to speak tech every day, every time.
All right, let's take a look at the accessibility challenge. What do you think are the most common barriers that this African entrepreneurs face in trying to adopt technology, especially at the grassroots levels?
Yes, coming from my very strong experience in people starting tech businesses, the major issue is actually getting talent to actually work, to create this solution. Because first, we must know that as much as tech is the magic wand, someone is doing the magic, someone is doing the background work. So one of the major things I believe that entrepreneurs face is actually having to hire or get people to work with them, and then to also pay, for such services. In a situation where the entrepreneur is not a developer or does not have any knowledge in tech, they have to pay heavily, for any tech developer they're actually going to bring on board to help them create a solution. So it's a major problem in the entrepreneurial tech space. So if as an entrepreneur, if you don't have access to maybe your brother who is a developer, your sister who is a product designer, you have to pay for individual of those services. And it costs a lot of money for someone just trying to start up a business. So it's a major constraint for entrepreneurs. They struggle a lot with that. That's why most entrepreneurs, I do advise them that you can, put out flyers for volunteers. We have quite a number of people who are willing to volunteer. But the challenge to that is that most volunteers cannot give you 100% deliverables, especially when it comes to building your business, because they also have other things they are doing. They have other projects they are working on. So it might actually affect, the growth, the stability of your tech project or your tech business you're working on. So it's a major challenge. It's a major challenge because sometimes it's not even about access to network or something. For entrepreneurs, getting the right talent and even being able to pay the right talent to develop technological solutions for your business can be a lot of money, lots of time, it's a major challenge. It's a really major challenge. And we are also looking at how to resolve that at Nocode Africa.
Okay, so still on the accessibility challenge, many small businesses, they feel like technology is expensive and out of reach. So how can this perception be changed?
Oh, well, I believe first it has to start from the mindset of the entrepreneur, because if you believe something is unreachable, it will continually be unreachable. Without any doubt, tech to small entrepreneurs can actually have a limit. There's a limitation as to what entrepreneurs who don't have a lot of funding can get from the tech market. But so it's being unaccessible, we would not want to put that tag. We will not want to put that tag. So people are not discouraged. But to look at the lighter side, at the brighter side rather, is that if you are able to first convince yourself that I can access tech, then your journey to reaching the right people begins. The second step is also knowing that yes, tech costs a lot of money, but there are other ways in which a business can actually access tech without paying quite a huge sum of money. And one of it is recruiting volunteers. When you recruit volunteers to help you build on your project, you can pay them, maybe half the price that you are initially supposed to pay maybe a full-time developer working on that project. So yes, tech is very expensive because building an app today is not just about having $100. You need more than $100 to build an app, to scale an app, to even keep it running on Play Store. Because most of our cloud services are not in Nigeria, so you have to pay for cloud services, you have to pay for this, you have to pay for developers. If you count the cost, it goes, higher and higher every day. But when you want to start something like this, you have to have the right knowledge and take your time to also search the internet. There are a lot of young developers out there who are open to take up roles. So that is where your search should start from as an entrepreneur, looking to launch your business using tech. So don't look at it as, oh no, tech is expensive. If I need to get a developer, I need 500,000. I don't have 500,000 at the moment. No, don't, like as entrepreneurs, we shouldn't see it as an off limit. We shouldn't see it as an impossible thing. There are a lot of young tech enthusiasts, tech experts who are on the social media platform looking forward to taking up projects. It now depends on you as an entrepreneur to convince them to come on your project. So yes, it is expensive, but there's a way and ways around it.
Pressed for time. So for an entrepreneur watching today who feels really overwhelmed by technology, because believe me, I know you said it's a mindset thing, but technology can be really overwhelming. Now, what's the very first step they should take?
The very first step you should take is, I know that running a business can be very difficult. It can be very taxing. You have to attend to so many issues at the same time. But the first thing is knowledge. Knowledge helps you to scale better in the tech space. If you are able to devote an hour or 30 minutes in a day out of your busy schedule to say, oh, I want to learn about tech. Now, learning about tech doesn't have to be coding. There are other aspects of technology that you can learn on the surface, and this will help you, transition better into tech. Because the truth is, if you don't have the knowledge as an entrepreneur, you can get scammed. You can get scammed because people realize that, oh, you don't have knowledge about it, and they just want to take advantage of that, to charge you and to even call minor things as bogus. So you already have a lot of stress, solving your business problems. So the best thing to do is to have a little knowledge about how tech works. You can search online. You can do a little search online, take videos, check out videos. That is the best step. Once you have knowledge about technology, it's easier to navigate. So you then know, oh, who do I need on my project right now? Who do I need for my business right now? You know the difference between a web app. You know the difference between a website. Know those little terminologies. Yeah, I just feel like like in secondary school, we used to have this registry. If you can go through a tech registry, it helps you to know and understand technology. That is the first step. Then other steps like sourcing for who to bring on your project, sourcing for funding, they begin to happen. And lastly, join communities. Tech communities for founders, for businesses. You might not be building a tech product at that time, but search for tech communities for founders that can help you, scale better in the tech space. That's what I'll actually say.
Finally, if you have to leave our audience with one message, I know that Nocode is actually doing so much when it comes to mentorship and network. But if you have to leave our audience with one message about technology and entrepreneurship in Africa, what would it be?
What I would say is tech is actually the future. So the earlier you put technology in your business, the better visibility you get. And that starts from it doesn't matter how small or how long your business has been existing, you need to put tech in whatever way. You need to simplify. You can start for as low as automations. Automate your tasks. Maybe the way you respond to messages is through WhatsApp, and then someone has to respond every day, wake up every morning, and that is what they do every day. No, you need to start moving towards automating that process. So as an entrepreneur, what I will leave with you is automate your process so that your customers won't leave you because they have to wait 4 hours to receive a response from you. Once you automate your process, you are on the right track to making your business scale and become a global brand.
Thank you so much, Deborah Omotara, for your insight on Business Morning this morning. It was really an insightful section with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
All right, that has been our focus on Business Morning. This morning, I remain Deborah Ezeh, and thank you for watching. And just stay with us as the Breakfast Show continues with the big story after the short break. Have a good morning.